Thank you everyone for tuning into another episode of EC Techie, where this week I'm going to go over a new product that I've purchased, and I'm super excited to add it to my lineup, but this one is going to be a little bit different. I've actually used this now for roughly about 3 weeks. I took a little bit of time off just due to Christmas and the holidays and everything, but this week I'm going to go over my newest product, and it is the... Okay. Let's start off with what this is. So this is Apple's new MacBook Pro with their M1 silicone chip. Now this was actually released with the new Mac lineup as well. So we got the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, as well as the Mac Mini, which I actually covered in a couple weeks ago video. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. I'll put the link in the description for that. This is going to be their first MacBook Pro without an Intel chip and with their new M1 silicone chips as well. So it's pretty exciting for this lineup this year. Again, I've been test driving it for about 3 weeks. So far, it's been fantastic. Okay, so with a little bit of intro, obviously, like I said, this is the new MacBook Pro. I decided to go with the base model this year, so it starts about $12.99, but you're looking at, obviously, the M1 chip. You get 8 gigabytes of unified memory. You also get the 13-inch model. At this moment, this is actually going to be the only model that they have. So it's just 13-inch, but you have a 256 by 1600 resolution. So the screen looks amazing. All the colors pop really well. You know, it's your classic MacBook experience. This model is actually going to be the 256 gig model. That is the base model. Of course, you can go up to the next step that has 512 gigabytes and then 16 gigabytes of memory. But to be honest with you, I chose this model with the 256 just because I don't need a ton of storage physically on my MacBook. I actually use a 8 terabyte physical hard drive that sits on my desk. You can just plug it right into it. Works absolutely perfect, no issues there. So for example, whenever I'm working on like big projects, whether or not that's the Phone Buzz podcast or editing for these, I just typically store all of them on my MacBook until I'm done with them and then move them over, so that way it doesn't hardly take up any space other than like physical apps and whatnot. Now, like I said earlier, with its counterpart, obviously this year, you can get the MacBook Air for $999. For this model directly, it starts at $12.99. I believe it goes up to $14.99, maybe $17.99. I'll double check on that one for you, but this one is $12.99 for this model. So of course you're going to spend about $300 more if you chose to go with this model instead of the MacBook Air. So originally I was actually going to look at the MacBook Air instead of the Pro model, just because I was thinking maybe save a little bit of money, as well as, you know, it may potentially not need the extra horsepower that comes out of the Mac Pro. But I mean, overall, it's been absolutely fantastic. It has pushed through no matter what I throw at it, 4K video, regardless of the amount of video I'm working with, audio, it works perfectly. Of course, I also have it alongside my Mac Mini, so transferring files through AirDrop is amazing. It's super seamless. Everything just works, and that's the nice thing with Apple is regardless of which model you get, pretty much you're just getting it for the slight boost and speeds or whatever that may be. There's obviously a reason to go for one or the other, but for this case, just from what I do directly, I decided just to go with the MacBook Pro instead. The crazy part with working with this for a couple weeks now is big notices that I've had. I originally had a 15.4 inch MacBook Pro. I think it was a 2018, and it is, this 13-inch is incredibly light. Obviously, it's not as big. That's an obvious one. But for how powerful it is and how slim it is, honestly, it's super lightweight. Everything. It didn't seem like they cut corners, on screen quality or anything like that. It still looks absolutely fantastic. I have hardly any gripes with it, but I'll get into that in a second. I thought it was going to be hard for me to honestly edit on a smaller display just because I was used to that 15.4 inch, but I decided to move down, and honestly, it really hasn't slowed me down whatsoever. It's, again, worked super nice. It really doesn't make that big of a difference. I do use a 27-inch display for my Mac Mini, so depending on what work I'm trying to do, whether or not it's any schoolwork or audio or video, I may throw it up on my bigger screen, which you can just use through the Thunderbolt ports on the side, but either way, it really doesn't matter to me, and they both look fantastic. So honestly, it has not slowed down my workload whatsoever, and I love it so much. Now, I would be honestly lying with you if I didn't say it was all perfect and sunshine and rainbows. Most of the time, it's fantastic. I mean, all of my gripes typically come from the software side of it. So not necessarily how it performs in the world of software, but more of what's acceptable and what can be used at this moment. So if you didn't know, the M1 silicone chips now use what they call Rosetta 2. Essentially, that is just a middleman, if you want to say, without getting too into it, to where it will let Intel-based apps work with the new M1 chip. So using that with like Photoshop, whether or not it's Premiere Pro, whatever that is, working with that, it will just run through Rosetta. So I typically used to work with the Adobe suite and have found myself working now with Final Cut Pro instead, just because of what it can do. So yeah, so the suite obviously is optimized for Intel chips, so it's a little bit different, and honestly, most of the apps struggle whenever booting them up and getting some basic tasks done throughout the whole Adobe suite. I still do use it for like Photoshop, Lightroom, stuff like that for thumbnails, but again, all of my video editing and stuff like that has kind of moved over to Final Cut Pro just because it's much easier, it's optimized, it flows super well. Again, use that with both of my M1 products. And obviously this is going to change the longer that it's out. These products are not going to really go anywhere. I expect Apple to really use these M1 chips for, the foreseeable future. And so obviously all of these apps have to adapt and have to move forward throughout the whole process. So they're going to start updating themselves. We already have Adobe Beta out. So you're going to have some apps that will try to run off of it. Again, they're still in beta, so it's not super great yet. I haven't even really dealt with it a whole lot just because it's much easier to work off of Final Cut Pro, but they are there if you do need them. It's honestly really hard to say anything bad about this product because I love it so much. I mean, they're fantastic. I literally have hardly had any issues whatsoever, and none of it comes from hardware. It really just comes from the software side of it. All of my apps work completely perfectly that I use, at least. Everything transferring back and forth between my Mac products are flawless, and everything just is amazing. Speakers sound amazing, screen looks amazing, it's durable, lightweight, and I hardly have anything to complain about. So I think you guys should definitely go look at them, or at least go check them out. Like your local Best Buys, I'm sure some Walmarts have them and everything. Go check them out, try them out, because who knows, this may be the year that you want to upgrade, or if you want to wait for the next set of silicone chips to come out, then maybe wait for the next iteration to come out. Hopefully we will see some iMac Pros, iMacs, whatever that may be with that new silicone chip. We'll just have to see, but I'm super excited for what's next. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of EC Techie. I really appreciate you guys listening and watching to this one here. I'm gonna have everything linked down in the description below. Go ahead and go check out this new camera because it looks really good. Go ahead and check out everything in the description. I want to thank you guys for listening again. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, or wherever you're watching this. A peace.